Paul Sullivan asks, I got two questions here. I want to believe millennials are a libertarian generation waiting for a dose of reality to become more conservative, but I just don't know. The recent displays of stupidity from social justice warriors on many campuses and the fact that the overwhelming number of students are Sanders supporters worries me. And I try to group these questions together so that I don't think people feel like I took one question and didn't get the other person credit. So along very similar lines, John Chester says, I wish that a useless millennial that is completely dependent on their parents but is also a strong conservative and avid fan of liberty wasn't a worthless millennial. So I talked about programming for millennials, and I got a little off the track with these guys I met over at Turning Point USA. Look, let me say this about, you've heard me bash millennials here, and they deserve bashing, most of them. Really, their parents deserve it. Let me say three things about millennials. First of all, they're not all social justice warriors. I think I heard earlier today that it's about 40% of them call themselves conservatives or libertarians, so that's half. And that's an important half, because that's not just 40% of the population. That's the 40% that has withstood this ongoing perpetual barrage from the left their entire lives. So that 40% is a particularly fit 40% as far as their mental strictness is concerned, their mental rigor. If you're still believing that you're a conservative or a libertarian after 20 years of indoctrination from the left, that's a 40% that's a tough-minded 40%. Second thing I'll say about millennials is, our armed forces consist mostly of people who fit into that generation. And the people we're putting in the field right now are tremendous warriors. Now, that has changed somewhat lately, and it has gotten a little significantly less warrior-esque in the military, but it's not really their fault. It's the fault coming down from above. So, look, some of these guys out there, I've seen 18, 19, 20-year-old soldiers, and those kids kick ass. And they're millennials too, so there's that. And then the final thing was, I just put this in Afterburner. It's going to show up in another week or two, looking into 2016, as just because 2016 is fog of war to me. It's just, I can't make any sense out of what's going to happen. But we closed it, just got lucky, because the night before, hang on a second. Who is it? Thought somebody was banging on the door. It turns out they were just banging on trash cans outside, and the ladies' room is on the other side of that wall over there. So, thought I heard somebody pounding. Anyway, one other thing you can say about millennials is this. It takes some getting used to for this old Apollo kid, but it takes a lot of getting used to. But I watched the video of the SpaceX landing the other night. Eisenhower, who, as you know, is the angel with the flaming sword who keeps the gates of the Stratosphere Lounge and so on. He sent me a text. He said, "Welcome to this sustainable space age." I said, "What happened?" I knew it must have happened late in the day, because I had been watching Drudge and Instrument most of the day. And then I saw the video, and he said, this was my moon landing moment. And it's not up there with the moon landing, because I've seen them both, but I can connect to what he's saying. When SpaceX put that rocket down, they put it up there. They launched the second stage. Second stage went into orbit, deployed 11 satellites, and then they flew it back down, re-entered the atmosphere, I think at Mach 4, somewhere in there, turned itself on its tail, and flew itself down to a landing. Our friend Eisenhower pointed out to me something that I really wasn't aware of. We've seen this kind of hover test before, where a rocket goes up to a certain altitude, comes down to a soft landing, and Bezos with the Blue Origins just did that. But as Eisenhower pointed out, those rockets are relatively low thrust rockets, and they can be throttled down to a point where you can actually hover the rocket. But the Falcon 9 was strong enough to put this payload into orbit, which meant that the rocket could not be throttled down enough to hover. That basically, I think they called it a smash hover, something like that. So basically what they're saying is, since this rocket cannot be throttled down enough to slow down and hover, the timing has to be perfect. It has to come down under power, and then at full power at the last minute, at the last instant, it's got to go to full power so that at full power it settles right onto the ground and doesn't bounce. And that makes it even harder. But the point I'm trying to make about the Millennials is, like I said, I'm an Apollo guy, and I expect my mission controllers to have crew cuts and pocket protectors and wear short button-down shirts with ties. And to hear and see these Millennials, because that's what they are, they're in their 20s, most of these people, 20s or early 30s, to hear the voices, these young voices, and then to see mission control with people in polo shirts if they were dressed up, a lot of them in T-shirts. It was like, man, I don't know, it was a bit of culture shock for me. But when they cheered and this thing landed, I thought, oh, these kids, you know, and obviously Elon, they did it. These kids, they did it. And then they did something that actually made me cry. They did this giant mob of people outside, and the rocket was down. It was on the ground, and it was a success. It was an enormous success. And these people just started going, USA, USA. And I really got teary about that. It's like they had a right to be proud of themselves for what they did as a company. But for them just to spontaneously break out into cheers of USA really moved me and gave me a great deal of hope. Because, again, it was completely spontaneous. And they did something, these young people over at SpaceX did something that the Russians have never done, that the Chinese have never done, that the Europeans have never done, and that they basically considered to be undoable. They brought a rocket back down and landed it. And so this is significant, because if you can do this with the Falcon 9, you can do it with virtually any rocket. We all used to think that the only recyclable space program would be something like the shuttle, but the shuttle was an incredibly complex vehicle. And you can certainly make the case that it was too complex. If you can put something into orbit, the Dragon capsule, where's the money is where I'm trying to say. Where's the cost? The primary cost is in the capsule, the part that goes into orbit. That's where all the avionics are and stuff. It's probably the most expensive single component, but a big part of the cost are the main engines and the main booster. Now, you're never going to get the second stage back or the third stage, because something has to actually get into a suborbital. When a spaceship goes into space, when you see a rocket go into space, it's not done. It's in an orbit that will bring it back down to crash back into Cape Canaveral from the west. It will go up and come around and land right back on Cape Canaveral from the other direction and break up coming into the atmosphere. So anything that gets into orbit gets up to apogee, up to its highest point or whatever its point, and then has to fire the rocket again to circularize the orbit. So that second stage or third stage isn't coming back. It's a relatively small expense, though. And SpaceX says, hey, look, if we bring the main stage back and we bring the capsule back and they're both reusable, just turn them around, you've cut a huge percentage out of what it costs to put things into space. It was an enormous breakthrough. It was a great, great day. It was the first time I've been proud of much of this private space stuff. I'm proud of Spaceship One. I'm proud of Burt Rutan. I'm not pleased. Please don't misunderstand me. I'm not pleased, needless to say, that Spaceship Two came apart. But on some level, Spaceship Two coming apart means you're up there pushing the envelope. You're trying to do something that hadn't been done before. But this was the first time I was, in a long time, where I've been proud, but I haven't been moved. And I wasn't moved by the landing. I was proud of the landing, and I was pleased by the landing, but I wasn't moved by the landing. But when these kids started chanting USA, I was moved, and I realized I'm too hard on them. I'm generalizing. I don't know what percentage of them are social justice warriors and what percentage of them are potential SpaceX employees, but it's our job to make sure that more of them go into the latter camp than the former. And frankly, again, isn't it really just come down to saying, hey guys, it's okay to be men, it's okay to be women, and furthermore, it's okay to have a dream and go out and work for it. It's okay to work your life for a goal and be part of something, and you're a freaking rocket scientist, and you deserve to be paid well for that because you put a lot of time and effort into it. Isn't that better than just sitting around, our thatched huts, with our sustainable algae cakes and raising money for the Guatemalan water snake? Isn't that more fun? Fun's the word, man. I'm running 2016 on fun. That's the campaign. Fun. We have fun. They don't. Period. Choose carefully.